Bueno, me encuentro con una de las voces más importantes a nivel cinematográfico del cine afro, Casey, Casey Lemons. Thank you very much for your time and welcome to our country.
Oh, thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here and to be with you, Walter. Thank you.
No, thank you. So, my first question, either as an actor or as a director, why film? What sparked that long-lasting love affair?
When I was, because I did some theater, I wanted to be an actress since I was a little kid, and I was writing also since I was a little kid. But I lived in a building where a documentary filmmaker, the famous one, named D.A. Pennybaker, was editing. And I remember going into, just peeking into the editing suites and seeing a little bit the process. I was probably 20, and I said, you know, that's just really cool. And so when I first went to film school, I thought I might do documentaries. But I was always interested in doing film and TV as an actress.
I understand that one of your first roles, if not your first role as a child, was You Gotta Write?
It was a television show.
Television show?
Yeah, yeah.
About the first and only black girl who was...
Who integrated a white school, yes.
Yeah, I was wondering...
That was great.
Yeah, what kind of an impact on a young mind does that role have?
Well, my mother was kind of a civil rights activist, you know, so I was very prepped for that. And she was from the South, you know, from Tuskegee, Alabama, and so I'm sure I discussed the story with her. But I was just so thrilled to be working because I was the only kid on set. You know, I had it was like a courtroom show, and I had to kind of. You know, testify on the stand, and all the other actors were adults and mostly men, and I was very intimidated, but also very excited by it.
Yeah.
I cried when it was over.
Really?
Yeah, it was like a 3-day shoot, and when it was over, I was bereft. You know, I guess kind of starstruck and stage struck. I just was so happy to be on a set and be working with those actors and have had the opportunity. And I cried when it was over because I was so sad. I didn't know if it was ever going to happen again, you know. And it was so exciting.
I'm sure it was.
And I was like, all right, this is it, you know.
Yeah. One thing about good actors is that they are always learning, always watching, always observing. And I find that they are very observant of their directors as well, especially when they are inclined to become directors themselves. And those live lessons usually come in handy. And your first movie role was under Mr. Spike Lee.
It was.
So I was wondering, what about him and your experience with him sort of filtered into your own
Definitely
job?
That Spike could be intimidating without raising his voice. Oof. You know, he could be very calm and just kind of sitting back and going, so why are we waiting, you know? And I thought...
the stare he has.
Yeah, I thought he was very cool, and he's just such a cool guy, and very... kind and warm, but also could be reserved and kind of spooky, you know? And I thought that was kind of an interesting quality for a director to have.
What about his points of view?
Yeah, I mean, I am a huge fan of Spike Lee, so I was very influenced. You know, his first film was hugely groundbreaking for us. It was seminal, and it kind of changed everything, and we became so excited about this film, so I was just thrilled to work with him.
Wow. And you know, through the years I've watched how all the audiovisual storytelling tools become cheaper, more available to a more diverse population of people who wants to put their stories forth. It's become cheaper, more democratic in a way, and the stories and the points of view also become more diverse.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but it's as of late, I don't know, recent years, that I have felt the pushback and the politics being so much harder on the whole diversity issue. What's your take on this as an insider?
I don't know. I mean, it's quite disturbing because film is so aspirational. You know, that we would think in a world where you can invent anything, you can have any future you want, you can have any outcome you want. You know, you can have happy endings, and of course also reflect reality that it's kind of shockingly backward still. In terms of diversity and parity between men and women. I mean, which is so obvious. It just seems so obvious. Like half of all people are women. You know what I mean? And still, we are very much underrepresented. Still not being paid as much money as women, and then as black women. You know, when you start talking about underrepresented populations, you know, I mean, really, it's really kind of shameful. So. You know, periodically I get really optimistic. You know, like, okay, this is it. It's going to change. You know, and then it never happens as fast as I want it to. But I teach in a film school, and teaching in a film school keeps me optimistic because I see the diversity of voices that are emerging, and I know that I'm seeing the future.
Yeah, same happens to me. You know, being covering this and being part of this. I mean, I did a documentary. With cell phones, man, we carry 4K cameras in our pockets now. So you go great. Like everyone's going to be able to talk, but still you feel the pushback. Is it uncovering something that's always been there, but some people refuse to acknowledge?
Well, the interesting thing is it's so in your face. I mean, it's actually quite blatant, but people still don't acknowledge it. I think that, you know, when we talk about things like white privilege and people pretend not to understand what that means, part of white privilege is not having to think about it. Right? Yeah. Not having to think about it. Like, what do you mean?
Privilege?
It's so, I think that that's still, you know, a real thing. And I think a lot of people just don't acknowledge it. Recently, I directed a movie, and I came into a meeting, and I was the only person of color. Wow. And I said, what is wrong with this picture? And they went, oh, and somebody said to me, well, now that I see it through your eyes, I can see. I'm like, yeah, well, that's white privilege. You don't have to see it through my eyes until I'm in the room, and then you're suddenly self-conscious if I bring it up. But I think that we still don't, you know, I'm saying we as the greater we still don't have a handle on even our own perspectives. You know what I mean? It's hard to see each other's perspectives. You know, so when something that might look obvious to me is not necessarily picked up by other people. That's why events like this, this festival, are so important, because we need each other. That's you know, we need each other for that support. Like, hello, we're here. You know, and actually there are a lot of us, and we're very international. You know, and that's important. Those voices, it kind of brings us together, makes the world a little smaller, and reminds us who's out there. Because when I started, I got to say, like, there were very few of us, you know, filmmakers of color, especially women filmmakers of color. And now there are quite a lot, but you do have to, you know, we need to remind each other that we're all out here, and that we are actually kind of a powerful force, a very powerful creative force, and a powerful, increasingly powerful financial force.
That's good. And film is a powerful medium, because like a film that gave me a boost of confidence, and at the same time it frightened me on how history can be swept under the rug, was Summer of Soul. By,
good.
What an amazing piece of art.
What a beautiful piece of art. Yeah, Questlove.
Questlove. Yeah, I was like uplifted, and right after the movie ended, I was like, but all this thing was forgotten.
What happened? And that was a long time ago, right?
Yeah. I was wondering which pieces of black film were inspirational for you, or
so many. I can remember the first time I saw Black Orpheus. You know, and just being like, okay, like I was, you know, it was a kid, you know. So many. Certainly, Spike Lee was, you know. But I mean, I think early on, it was things that we were allowed to see, what we were given as consumers, you know. So those early films, you know, of the 70s, and suddenly you're seeing, you know, Cicely Tyson, or you know, Diana Ross, or Billy D. Williams, you know, and so Lady Sings the Blues, and you know, movies like that. But as I reached maturity, and I can remember distinctly that there were a few films. Uzan Palsi's Sugarcane Alley. Yes, was very much like, oh, a woman made this, a woman of color made this film, and she's kind of speaking my language, that magic realism, a child's perspective, which I, you know, was very interested in for my first film, and certainly again Spike, you know. But I was also very inspired by all kinds of filmmakers. You know, I was very inspired by Bergman, you know. And also French cinema, and you know, the French New Wave.
Talking about this event that brings you to Costa Rica, which we are so very glad it happens. What do you take out of this experience of being able to, talk to the people, to filmmakers?
It's incredibly life affirming, honestly, to see people of color, from the diaspora together, Like I said, just a powerful creative force. Really just sitting there last night in the theater and watching the images from people's films and just saying, look how it's so beautiful, so much life and such an interesting perspective. I think we are an international force, and for us to be able to talk to each other, and share thoughts and ideas and see each other's films. I mean, I think that's amazing.
I need to sidestep for a while, but still talking about an icon as Whitney Houston was.
Yes.
What a daunting task to take on that life.
Yes.
What excited and scared you the most about undertaking that chore?
Well,
not chore.
I stayed excited and scared the whole time. So that didn't go away. But I think because I knew her a little bit.
Personally?
Personally. I just gotten a glimpse into her because I wrote a screenplay for her. I actually had written 2 screenplays for her. One that I tried to get her involved with, and another that she and her company actually hired me to do.
Oh, wow.
And so I got a chance to sit with her, and I was very moved by her because she was already an icon.
Yeah.
She was at the height of her career, and she was my idol, but she was also very human. And I found that moving. You could see she had kind of the weight of the world on her shoulders, and she was tired, And
of the burden.
Yeah, the burden.
Stardom.
You could feel it. You could feel the burden of stardom, and that was very moving to me. And I thought, if you could get next to this woman who was both this tremendous icon, but also a real person, with real problems and
fragile
struggles.
Human being.
Exactly. Then that helps us to even appreciate more, the gift.
She was so powerful.
Yes, so powerful. Yeah. I mean, her ability to speak to a moment in time and know how to communicate. I mean, I think that's amazing because most of us we don't recognize the exact moment that we're in, except in retrospect. But there was something about Whitney that could speak to a moment in time. Like her performance of the national anthem.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that really was, as we're going into, this terrible war and the first Gulf War and she
got into the Billboard charts again, the national anthem.
Yeah, and she, crazy, and she's speaking. She totally is kind of doing her version of it, but also just speaking to a moment in time, and also her concert in Free South Africa. The first American artist to perform in Free South Africa, the first Black artist, as well, and just the first Black American artist. And that, speaking to that moment in time and being able to feel the energy, because I think she was able to feel the energy that she was being given and give that back. It's such a wonderful gift. I mean, great performers can do that.
That's right.
Such a wonderful gift. So I'm a huge fan. I'm in awe of Whitney, and yet I understand that she was a person, and then that makes her even more impressive.
You were the right person for the job.
Thank you.
Yes, you were.
Thank you.
Now about your future. Have you done that film that everybody wants to make?
No, it's still in my future. It's still in my future. I mean, I've done films that I've loved working on, but I think that I still have films that I want to do. That is, that one is still right around the corner. Maybe it'll stay that way forever. I don't know, but I'm hoping that I get to have that experience.
Can I get a glimpse into which ones you're eager to make?
Like every director, I want to make a war film.
A war film?
I would like to. Yeah, there's a specific one that I want to make. It's a very not a well-known story.
Oh really?
Yes. And so that's the film that I hope to make one day.
I'm curious now.
Well, it has to do with Mussolini's invasion of Ethiopia. There's a wonderful book by Mazza Mengistu called The Shadow King, and I would love to make an adaptation of this book. And there's a story that I wrote a long time ago, actually for Whitney a long time ago, that is still very close to my heart. It ended up being a completely original pitch, and I really love this story, and I'd like to make that one day. So I'm hoping to make that soon as well.
Well, if you have any final advice for aspiring actors or filmmakers that you would like to share? That would be great.
I think that the important thing to remember is that our voices are necessary. You know, I mean, film is like a time capsule. So we want to think that when we're, you know, somebody from another planet could come and find the time capsule of our films and get a good representation of who we were. So until we're fully represented, we're not doing that job. So I would say your voices are vital, your voices are necessary, and you need to speak and you need to be heard as a filmmaker, and now is the time.
You're wanted.
Yes, you're wanted. You're wanted. You know, the world is your oyster, and really, we need to communicate. We need those voices, and so I would say, do your thing and keep at it, and you know, and God be with you.
Wow. Thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Walter. Appreciate it.